Hello, beautiful people. This is Zaria here. My page and my work has been for so long about folk who have had trauma and had adversity in childhood. And a couple of years ago, I went on a course about autism and female autism. And suddenly it woke me up. So many of the qualities that they were discussing, I was just flummoxed. I was utterly flummoxed that so many of these qualities that were autistic related to me. I just thought I was typical, but I was showing the impact of trauma from childhood. I'd had a full buffet of trauma. And then I posted on my Facebook page saying, you know what? Having gone on this course of autism, I'm really realizing that I probably am autistic. And somebody in the comments said, oh, I think you're probably autistic, but I also think you've got ADHD. But the issue is that the majority of autism and ADHD diagnosis is done on men and the research. So look up female ADHD. I did that and I was blown away. I went upstairs and I read this, I just Googled female ADHD and I read it to my kids and they were like, do they follow you around? That sounds so much like you. And I've always thought that I had dyslexia because I was always in special needs classes. I mixed up letters. I mixed up colors. In my head, I could see the color, but I named it wrong. And it's still to this day, I get it wrong. And so then to realize, wow, I am not just autistic or dyslexic or ADHD. I'm probably neurospicy and have a full range. About 40% of folk who are autistic also have dyslexia or ADHD. It generally isn't, frequently it's something that you have different diversities, different divergencies alongside. So I wanted to share a few things that seem common along the different neurospicy the different traits across the different diagnoses. Oops, I just tapped on something and it shouldn't have. All right, so this video depends where you are watching the video. I'm just going to see the majority of you are watching in on the Restoring Love page, which is a public page. So if you comment, it will highly likely be public. A couple of you are watching in an old group that's private, but if you comment, I'll be able to see. But I just wanted to let you know that for the majority of you, and somebody's in my Restore group that's watching. So if you share, it's going to be public. I'm just letting you know. All right. So there are a few things that I got into trouble with when I was a child that so many people judged as I was being lazy or stupid or useless or pathetic. And there were just struggles with my functioning. It's not that I was bad, but it led me to feeling bad. Hands up if you had that. Did you have this judgment that there was something wrong with you versus there was a different way of functioning that you had, but folk didn't try to understand what that functioning was? So I wanted to share a few things with you that are challenges that I always judged myself for, but in reality, they're just because I'm neurodivergent. And for those of you who want more support with this, I will be going into, at the end, that I'm going to be doing a Neurospicy support month. So I'll share more about that, and you'll be able to get the link to that at the end. I'll put it in the comments for those of you who want, let me get it. For those of you who want more support and to feel like you're less alone, that other people are there for you and getting support. All right, so let me let me go through these 3 things that I want to talk to you about. One is executive functioning challenges. So one thing that I noticed, there are 2 aspects to executive functioning. One is regulation, and the other is organization. And what I find for myself, for those of you who are in any of my programs, you will know this, that I will say, all right, I'm going to do this next program. And then I think it will all be done then. And this is the date we're going to start. And then I get there and I don't realize how much stuff there is to do. And so then I go, oh my God, I'm going to have to change the date. And we'll look at time blindness in a little bit, because that's one aspect to this. But part of that executive functioning is the capacity to organize and prioritize. And I can see now how much this has affected my business and my functioning in the world. Throughout my kids being in childhood, there were a couple of friends in each of my kids' classes who just knew that as a single mom, I was overwhelmed. And I just always thought it was because I was a single mom and overwhelmed. I didn't realize it's to do with this neurospiciness. So are you somebody who struggles with organization and prioritizing? Because that is due to having a neurodivergent brain. So one challenge in that is being able to set goals and know, when should the goal be? Like, what is feasible based on how much work there is? And part of the reason the struggle happens is that your brain struggles to compute what done looks like. So if you don't know what done looks like so done looks like for me, a course is complete, or done looks like if you're going on a holiday, everything is packed, you're at the airport on time. To get a picture of that and break down all the little bits into pieces is a huge struggle for folk who have neurodiversity. And then when you've done, in setting the goal to prioritize what are the things that I need to do now and in what order, that becomes really hard, because you might over exaggerate that some things will take a certain amount of time and other things you think might be really quick, but actually it's a massive amount of things to do. So that's quite a challenge for folk who are neurodiverse, because they frequently will live in a daydreaming world, or flip between a daydreaming world and a really hyper-focused state, where they can just dive into something and get completely lost in whatever special interest they have. So fitting into a neurotypical where there's time and planning and days is really hard to get neurodiverse brains around these different challenges. So part of that is impacted is kind of living in the world when we're hyper-focused, that we can't necessarily hear things outside of it, or we hear things too much and then we can't concentrate and we lose our capacity. So that happens with me if I'm sitting working. It might take me ages to get to focus. And then once I've got into focus, if my kids come to interrupt me, it might take me ages to get into focus again. My kids now have got so great, because they're teenagers, it's a lot easier that they come in, and if they see that I'm in a hyper-focused state, they might just stand there letting me know that they're wanting to talk to me. And if I don't engage with them for a moment, then they know that I'm hyper-focused and want to finish something. And then I'll in the 5 minutes later, or however long it takes me to do it, I'll then let them know that I'm done. So that executive functioning is a huge struggle for folk who are neurodiverse, neurospicy. And the other side of that is the regulation in executive function. To regulate yourself, which often is why folk who are neurospicy have more meltdowns, because that capacity to regulate is really challenging. In the Neurospicy month that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be sharing with folk regulation tools to be able to calm yourself. Part of the reason that that happens, the regulation, is because of the heightened sensory awareness. For instance, my son is boiling the kettle now, and I can feel that I have to really heighten my capacity to think while that sound is coming. And I'm just going to describe what the sound feels like. Instead of the sound being like just over there in the corner, the sound feels like it's happening over here in my head. And it feels like it's usurping all the energy and attention. So it's really hard to focus on what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, because the sound is so huge that it doesn't feel like the sound is over there. It feels like it's in my bones and vibrating. And I just thought that everybody else experienced that. It's similar to when my daughter shared with me that words fly off the page. And I said, yeah, they do, don't they? I didn't realize that the majority of the planet didn't have words flying off the page. That's a sign of dyslexia. But I just thought it was normal because that's what I was experiencing. So all my life, I thought that people heard sounds in their bones. No, the majority of the people hear sound where it's happening. But I experience sound and sense like wind flows through my body, not past my body. And I didn't realize the majority of people didn't do that. So when you're having that tremendous overload that you're having to focus and concentrate to do any executive planning or functioning is excessively challenging because the sensory overwhelm is so much. I remember going to a music festival with my son, and we couldn't find him. It was because the sound was too loud, and I spent over an hour and a half. We had to find security to go and find him. He'd just literally run away, and he'd hid in a bush with his hands over his ears. And I didn't realize that he was just reading quietly. But that was frequent for him. Even if people were talking, he would put his hands over his ears because the sound was too much. And because I didn't feel like I heard sound through my ears, it felt like it was in my bones. I couldn't get rid of the sound that was in my bones. It's the same when I brush my teeth. I'm missing teeth because brushing my teeth is so intense that it feels like my bones are on fire at times when I'm brushing them, and it just becomes so overwhelming. I just thought that was from me being oversensitive because I'd had trauma. I didn't realize that it was because of being neurospicy. And it made me realize that probably a lot of the trauma that I experienced was because I was so weird and different as a kid. It's not explaining or excusing what people did. It just helped me to make sense of, oh gosh, this is probably why all of this has happened. And part of the reason that folk put their hands over their ears or they feel completely overwhelmed is because the pain center and the sensory center in folk who are neurodivergent is much closer together. So sensations, hearing, different sensations are closer to the pain center. And so it feels excruciating for some people to experience different things. And when that's happening, like with the kettle boiling, I can find myself that I really have to like talk louder in my head so that the sound, I drown out the sound of the kettle or whatever sound is in the room so that I can hear my own voice. I did not realize all of this was neurodivergent until 2 years ago. And I can see throughout my whole life of going to, 10 different therapists, not a single therapist in my life inquired into any of the sensory stuff or inquired into any of the reasons that I had got bullied to map out a pattern of the neurodivergent issues that were happening. And I'm so grateful to the shift in the world that is awakening me to what happened, or the reason that I'm like I am isn't just because of trauma. It's also because of how I'm wired. And what that has helped me to do is alleviate a lot of the internal shame, as well as internal blame on other people of going, in those days, they didn't have the skills and the tools to deal with it. I was put into like isolated in a special needs room. But I just thought that was because of dyslexia. I had dyslexia because words swirled around, but it was only when my daughter was diagnosed when she was 16. So that's like 5 years ago that I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure that if you're diagnosed with that, that's what I have too. But I was never diagnosed with anything. So it finally just all made sense for me that I'm probably neurospicy. All right. The next thing I want to talk to you about is blindness. In neurospicy folk, we've got time blindness as well as face blindness. I wrote about it on my Facebook page because yesterday I, in the sort of dyslexic thing, messed up somebody's name, and I just could feel myself cringe. I don't mind if I mix up colors, because a color isn't going to get upset that I've called it the wrong color, or numbers that I mix up. The number is not going to get upset. But if I call somebody the wrong name, or their child the wrong name, or I don't recognize the child, then I don't want to hurt somebody. But that face blindness or name mix-up is really common in folk who are neurodiverse. And the other thing is time blindness. And I didn't know this, and people would get really upset that I was late. And I now understand why it's like this, is that in neurospicy people, time feels like it warps. Sometimes it feels like you can get a lot done in a very short time due to hyperfocus. So you might work for half an hour, but for other people, it's been like 8 hours that you've done because you can work so fast. But other times, like if you schedule an appointment at 3 o'clock, you feel like you don't have enough time to do anything all day because you don't want to be late for the appointment, because it feels like time warps. Other times you think, wow, I have to get somewhere, say it's an hour away, but somehow there's a warped sense of time. So you think, oh, I just need to leave 45 minutes before because there'll be no traffic or whatever it is. And then you find yourself getting late. About 22 years ago, maybe 23 years ago, I was meeting up with a friend in London, and I was half an hour late. And I remember sitting there working out how long everything would take me and working it out, and then getting there, and I was half an hour late, and I couldn't understand how that happened. And she said to me at the time, I can't be friends with you anymore because you've got no respect for my time and you don't honor me. And I was like, oh my God, I so respect you and I so love you. It was nothing personal to do with her. It was just that time felt like it warped, and people felt annoyed and frustrated with me, and I would try to do things differently. I've got so much better at it. But time feels really weird to me, where I will set something up and go, this is the date we start. And then when I get closer to the date, I feel it feels really wrong. It feels like it's not right, and I don't know how to put it right. And that's a neurospicy quality. But I always thought it was just because of my father, because he would say he would be somewhere and then he wouldn't come, and I felt like I didn't matter. So it felt like this pressure and trauma. I now realize that my father was probably had ADHD, and he probably had time blindness. And that led him to do the same thing, where he would say, I will be here on a certain day. And when that day came, it just didn't, it felt warped, it felt wrong. So part of this means that sometimes we'll be late. Sometimes we will be spaced out because the time just emerges. Bye, my love. My son's just going for a bike ride. Or we overbook our times because we think that we can manage a lot more than we can. A few of the things that I'm realizing in being neurospicy, because I'm in the process of being diagnosed, but it is also new to me of understanding what are these different qualities and capacities within me, being autistic, ADHD, and dyslexic. And it's alleviated a lot of shame in who I am, and understanding these things take a lot of energy from me and a lot of skills for there to be equity in the world, because having these different things of executive function challenges, sensory overwhelm, time and face blindness means that it's harder to be able to function in a neurotypical world. And in my Restore group, we've been doing regulation tools to help you to focus and get things done. For those of you who would like support in doing this, let me find the link. That's the link. Because it is ADHD month in October, we are doing a month of Neurospicy support. So if you are neurospicy, or you have a child who is neurospicy and you want some tools to support in regulation, as well as understanding or accountability and support in getting things done. I was chatting with a coach who I work with every year. He runs different programs through the year, and every year I work with him, and he's got ADHD. And I said to him, I'm just always so amazed at how much you get done. And he said, oh, you don't understand. I never get things done alone. Every step of the way I have support. I can't function alone. I have to have support. And because of him, I now have a support buddy who I work with every single day, Monday to Friday. And he has ADHD. And it's meant I've got so much more done because of having support. So if you found in your life that you've been really stuck and you've been struggling without support, then this Neurospicy support month will enable you to get things done that you haven't before because you haven't had the support, so that you'll feel more accountable. You'll feel like you've got backbone. And the tools that we use for regulation tools are designed by somebody who had autism. He was mute until he was 7. He couldn't read or write until beyond 17, and then became an engineer and created these tools to be able to help him. His name's Ron Davis. He's a very old man now, but it helped him to be able to function well in the world while still honoring his neurodiversity. So if you'd like to come along, we would love to have you. And I'd love to hear what you've got from this. In learning about being neurospicy, there has been such a shift in my heart that instead of feeling before that I must be bad because of how I was treated, there's a depth of understanding of, this is why I'm like I am. And I'm somebody who has a different level of functioning. And what I need to do is support myself to function and thrive in the way that I need to be able to live a dynamic, creative life. Whereas before, I always felt like I was stuck, or there was something wrong with me. And instead, now I know I need different levels of support, different tools, and a community around me who gets me rather than shames me or bullies me or makes me feel bad and wrong. So if you want that, come and join us. Ray, I'm so excited about it too. And really excited to support folk who are alone in this. so that you feel met and supported and loved. So come and join us. And on Monday, I'm going to be looking at the differences in neurospicy communication. And we're going to look at the communication differences in autism, dyslexia, and ADHD. So come and join us then. All right, everybody. Sending you so much love. Bye.